I'm going to offer just a snapshot really of some consultancy work that I undertook within a professional football club within their academy setting, of how we try to develop psychosocial skills characteristics within that setting. Okay, so within sort of talent development within English football, it's guided by the Premier League, and within that, it's guided by the Elite Player Performance Plan. Academies, as they're called within England, are graded category 1 to 4, a bit like maybe a school's Ofsted kind of categorization, in which a category 1 would be deemed the best. It would have more hours of delivery. It would be able to recruit young players at younger age groups than maybe their category 4 counterparts. Would often have a bigger staffing infrastructure, strength and conditioning, performance analysis, sports psych, education and welfare, player care, coaches, coach developers, the lot. Okay. But yeah, they're kind of any given moment, there's kind of maybe 12,000 people within the system in terms of players. And they're a really fruitful ground for trying to develop psychosocial characteristics. Coaches and practitioners working within those settings are guided by a football association, which is a national governing body, a recommended model of delivery, which is the 4-corner model. So if you look to the left, you've got these kind of neatly boxed 4 separate entities around sort of technical, physical, psychological, and social development. Slightly biased, maybe personal view is I've got a view that maybe the psychological and the social, or the psychosocial, probably underpin lots of the other things, so the technical and the physical. But nevertheless, we're guided by this 4-corner model, and as a result, there's an expectation for football clubs to deploy staff to deliver on those. To further support coaches and other practitioners, we do have theories, frameworks, tools, we have guidance to help us deliver on the psychosocial aspects. So, for example, we've got Erickson's work on identity, we've got intrinsic motivation, teaching personal and social responsibility, PCDEs, 5 Cs, positive youth development framework. So, I mean, for coaches, there are a range of tools that could be deployed to help them deliver on psychosocial competencies. If you coach, it's quite complex, it's difficult, it's a challenging role. I think my colleague Adam Gledhill kind of nailed the complexity in his systematic review on psychosocial development in football. It's so challenging. It's really difficult to kind of really target psychosocial competencies. It's really difficult to, not influence one thing which doesn't influence another. It's a really complex field. And, reflecting that complexity, what we see in academies is often coaches find it difficult to develop psychosocial skills and competencies through their coaching practice. We've got some examples of different studies here. Cook, it was 2014, he said in his investigation into Premier League academies, attention to psychological development was inadequately addressed. Our colleague Adam Gledhill, who works at Leeds Beckett, his work in women's football suggests that they don't feel able to support psychosocial development of players. And in Portuguese contexts, there's been reports that coaches generally would want to try and focus on winning. So where that leaves the 4-corner model is a little bit like that. So there's often still a technical and physical bias to delivery, and psychosocial sometimes is left to the unplanned. So why is it interesting? Well, it's interesting because the research will often tell us that people who've got certain psychosocial skills and characteristics probably do better in sport are better prepared for life, have better life skills. It's an interesting area to look at because, there are some programs exist, but there's very few in sort of football. So me wanting to kind of support football coaches, it's a really interesting area. We often only hear about programs like 5Cs and others that, we know about them once they've been delivered. Well, I was interested in how do you set something up? So I'm going to show you what we did at a particular football club. So I entered this particular context around 2015, and it was actually with the first team, wasn't with the academy at the time. Within the academy, which is below the red line, there was no kind of program of psychosocial development in place. There was nothing. So I'm going to try and talk you from nothing to something. So I was in and around the first team creating a program of work, but it's quite a volatile environment. Managers come and go, therefore support staff come and go. However, the more time I spent in the first team, the more time I spent in the academy, which was really, really useful. They started to say, well, can you do a workshop on parenting? Can you do a workshop on dual career? And that was the starting point. Eventually, they asked me to kind of redesign or help them redesign their whole coaching curriculum. And they actually allowed me to really kind of integrate psychosocial development into that, so into the coaching program. And what an opportunity! I could play around, I could make suggestions. Absolutely fantastic. We rolled out the program, and then we developed and increased the monitoring of that program over time. COVID has arrived and is hopefully going and now not involved. They ran out of resource, but this is kind of the process. So how did I go about setting something up or supporting coaches to set something up? Well, I spent quite a lot of time in the context, watched training, delivered some workshops, spoke to coaches, was invited to coach meetings, watched games, again, stood with coaches, speaking to coaches, chats on the phone, really understanding the specific needs of the specific environment, and that's at club level. Was able to build key relationships with staff. So first team manager, assistant, academy manager, senior professional players, getting their views of what they feel is important for that club. So really kind of getting almost buy-in, but really getting their insight into what psychosocial development is and what it means at this particular football club. I did things like, went above and beyond, and we had them up doing fitness testing at Leeds and things like that at the university, and worked with coaches and give them advice, guidance. They were at a stage where they were coming to me, and this kind of led to almost a joint development of what's important. So it wasn't the academic coming in saying you need to just develop these 5 or 6 things. It was a joint development between my academic background and reading and their expertise in the field. So we came up with what we call the 8 pillars for the club as Doncaster Rovers: presence, concentration, communication, commitment, self-awareness, confidence, control, resilience. These are not unique. So you read the literature on psychosocial development, these sort of words will come up. What was unique is the way it was set up and delivered, I think. What we did then, we layered on the startings of academic research support for those things. So there is research support for all the 8 characteristics. So other people doing other studies have said these things are important. Confidence is important for performance and life. So is resilience. So is self-awareness. And we started to layer on, like, what do these things look like, which I'll elaborate in a bit, which I think is a really important aspect of the program. But we got to a stage where we kind of had a common language. We had some observable behaviors, and coaches were starting to use those. In terms of a delivery model, it was kind of multifaceted, used a mixture of, explicit, implicit, planned. So we had a series of workshops. So we taught certain aspects. So kind of like the top circle here, we delivered stuff to them. We did workshops. So you've got pictures of boys here doing some kind of, looks like maybe a leadership type workshop or a communication workshop. And then we had coaches often providing opportunities to employ some of the skills that they'd actually been taught in the workshops, but employ them in training, employ them in games. And then I would work with the coaches to see how they were getting on, and I would support the coaches in their delivery as well. So it was a fully integrated program of workshop delivery and coach delivery. And that kind of approach is supported by, the work of, say Leah, who used to be at Leeds Beckett. You've got your psychosocial skills, but if you can facilitate the enhancement through coaching, they might turn into characteristics. They might become more stable. They might be used more efficiently. They might become used all the time without much effort. In that way, you probably get better people, probably get better players, probably get people better able to transition through different age groups, maybe even transition effectively out. What we did for coaches, so we gave players workshops. What we did for coaches was very similar. We achieved a common language. We undertook coach education. We delivered workshops to them, or I delivered workshops to them. I was available, phone, email, whenever I was around the training ground or the academy facility for constant dialogue with coaches, informal chats. I was at training, observed training. I was then able to further talk to coaches and say, when so-and-so did that was really displaying confidence at that point, or you had to be resilient in that game, didn't they? And that discussion with coaches was really, really useful for me. We also gave them workshop packs. So if you look top right, gave them workshop packs of ideas, advice, guidance, things they could do to promote a certain pillar. We tried to use a pillar each month, so we crossed the season. So we had to focus each month on a pillar in line with the coaching program. We developed observable behaviors for every age and stage for each of those 8 pillars. So what did a foundation phase player, so 9 or 10 years old, look like for confidence? Well, we might think the confidence because they volunteered, they answered questions, they moved with energy and purpose, and they maybe tried new skills before others. So they're quite simple, but really usable for coaches. If it's usable, it has impact. Observe coaches using Bob Muir's coaching practice planning and reflective framework. We gave informal observations when they were coaching, so offer advice, guidance, etc. The player workshops were twice a month, 45 minutes, aligned to, like I say, a pillar every 4 weeks. We did a range of videos, tasks, diaries, mission statements. We taught them. We've got a mission statement from an age group. We've got some kind of teamwork task there. And they were really useful. We taught them. Now, that has the potential to be quite decontextualized. This is a picture of people practicing swimming on a playground, okay? So obviously getting the coaches involved was really, really important. So this coach here, he coached these guys. He was able to offer context. He was able to offer examples of his own playing career. He was able to talk about the game that they just had, or how could they apply some of the skills in the game that they were going into. So it was really useful to get coaches involved. The other bit was the environment. So this is more kind of the implicit stuff that Sergio might have talked about in his presentation. We looked at a range of things that the environment does for these players and linked them and mapped them across to each of the pillars. So examples might be, we kind of offered leadership and ownership responsibilities for participants wherever possible. That might have been looking after kit. You might be on kit detail, might be cleaning the changing room and things like that. We offered opportunities for people to play up. We increased their challenge point, which made them be challenged, which might develop their resilience a little bit more. So we planned these things in. We worked to co-create team plans, outcomes for games and things like that. As we were discussing, debating, those kind of things, and that supported communication, amongst other things. We did some really kind of informal evaluation with coaches. So prior to the program, they scored themselves 4 out of 6 for knowledge. After, they scored themselves 5 out of 6 for knowledge. Before the program, they scored themselves 4 and a bit for planning, and there was an increase for planning after the program. Some informal, so Google Drive type comments was, they felt they benefited from the workshops, attending them with the players. So that was really useful. We asked the players, this was bigger than it looks. This was nearly 10,000 data points. We asked the players, how did you feel you developed over time? We asked them at 5 different time points. Between time 1 and time 5, there was 16% increase in communication, 11% increase in emotional control. And you can see them on the right-hand side. So on the whole, we ran some stats. So the ones that starred, there was significant differences. So we were seeing the benefits of that multifaceted approach to psychosocial development in the players through self-report. I think that was really positive for the program. Few challenges, access to coaches was difficult. Some are coached part-time, coach education time if they're not on the grass. That becomes expensive if they're in the classroom. Coaches probably were challenged a little bit in terms of the time they had to digest information and plan, often being part-time. High turnover of staff. So you do a load of work, halfway through the season, the coach leaves. Vast minority, still a little bit, not sure it was really their role to develop psychosocial skills, but vast minority. I think probably future things for me is more age and stage it. Increase the age and stage and increase the emphasis at different ages and stages. Further embed, we had an education department and we started to integrate the 8 Pillars program into that as well. That is an avenue where we could kind of further explore the 8 Pillars program. More longitudinal, even beyond the academy, would be useful to monitor. I think as any take-home messages, really, it takes time. You've got to involve coaches. If you're going in as a consultant, you have to involve coaches. They have to be part of the process. You can't just give them something and tell them to deliver it. It's got to be integrated. And it does have resource implications. It's extra time, it's extra planning. But, if you can plan for what you're looking for, you can have impact. And that's it. Thank you very much, guys.